Morning. I'm testing out the sound. Is that all right in the back? It's very difficult to see you, and a large part of the session is, at least the first half of it is designed for us to work together. So if I could ask, and I know you're in your comfort zone, you're already parked in your spot, you already put your money in the meter. If you would move a little bit closer, it might make it easier for us to function together. So that's an invitation. It would be great if you could do that, and then we can work a little bit more close than that. Don't be afraid. I've worked in West Virginia where people couldn't drink the water out of the tap because it was brown when it was come out. Hadn't seen a dentist ever in their life. I've worked in urban drive-bys in Los Angeles, South Central, where you were afraid to go to the training session because there was a shooting last night. I've worked with the West Virginia Citizens Conservation Corps in helping to establish that program and build it to now they hold a golf tournament every year. I've worked with the Pennsylvania Conservation Corps and all over the state. I've worked with the Ohio Civilian Conservation Corps, whose slogan was Ohio Conservation Corps, Ohio's best kept secret. I've worked with them when they've come down for floods. I've served 6 years in the Air Force. I've traveled to London, working with people in London. Oh my gosh, I've been to Samoa, working with people in Samoa. I've been to China, to Hong Kong, working with people all over the world. And that's why I say I'm blessed, because I have been able to move out of a mindset, for me personally, that was pretty rigid in terms of where I was born and raised in a city in a concrete jungle, because see, I was an urban person. And the urban person was really afraid to go into a rural environment. Because see, urban people think, there's no way that I'm going into a rural environment. Those people are going to kill me. And rural people, they're like, there's no way in the world I'm going into an urban environment. They're going to hijack me. And the suburban people are caught in the middle, not in my backyard. We don't want either one of them. So I'm saying that, and then to put some icing on the cake, Somerset, Johnstown, that's my home away from home. I've been coming here for 27 years. My wife is from Somerset. Right now, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law are in the nursing home because they just fell and had falls. My grandson is here in Somerset. So I've been coming back. I knew about the water changes. We were talking about it last night when they first got water from the reservoir. I've been here when there was no Walmart, no Sam's Club. I've seen this city and this part of the town change. As a matter of fact, when they come to shop, they come to Altoona, to Sam's Club to buy their stuff. This is where we come. So this is really interesting. I'm saying all that to give you a different context that I think I can relate to you as an audience, you as a group, and it's really nice. And I'm not trying to be prideful about that. It's just that when I was able to move out, so now I don't fit with the homeboys, so to speak, in the city because it's harder to relate. So now my vocabulary has changed. I'm not what's up and all that and then some and I've slipped away from that. Now I'm due to the broad perspective changes that have occurred throughout the Western Hemisphere. There's certain, I don't even curse people out the way that I used to do. Now I'm you insignificant piece of humanity born on the lowest step of ignorance. How dare you insinuate that I tolerate such diabolical insults? While your fiendish crusades give me the insight that you possess a very odious personality where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wild. They're like, what? I say, you stupid. And then in our vernacular, I'm just saying, you feel me? I'm just one of the people. When I was struggling in the Air Force, I was put out. I didn't have no place to live. A Mennonite family offered their home to me. And I'm going to tell you what, I learned something about standing around the grate in the middle of the floor getting heat in the morning. I understood what it meant to see the breath of my coal in the morning because I could sleep. I slept in the attic. It was the first time I had raw milk that you had to scrape like 4 inches off the top. I remember seeing Amish buggies in front of me and wondering, thinking, why are they moving so slow, those lights? That's what I remember. But I left with two of the best friends. I lived with Larry and Jeanette Yoder for a year. One day, I'm going to tell you something about culture, and then we'll get into this session. One day, I was called in front of the tribal elders. I had to give an explanation of why I was usurping the authority of the man in that house. talking about a cultural change. All Emilio was doing was taking Jeanette to the laundromat. All he was doing was taking her to the grocery store when she needed to go to the grocery store. He was just providing transportation. He was just out there with her son. But it made it look like I was taking over the husband's role and I was getting ready to lose my place to live. And I had to come before the Sanhedrin. I had to come before the council. It was big time. But after I walked away, I developed a different respect for people, Amish, Mennonite, and it was something that was totally blown. No one that I know in my neighborhood can relate to that. That's very different for me. I gave a testimony of my life because I ended up staying there. Larry didn't drink wine, but after I came back from Germany from a training, my gift to Larry on the way out was a case of German wine. And we had great time. I'm saying all that to say to you that I've expanded who I am through relating to people in very different ways. Now it's easier to go anywhere and work with anyone in a different capacity. And that's what it takes to build partnerships. And when I'm afraid, when I'm very afraid, and I had one of these clickers up here, people don't get along because they fear each other. People fear each other because they don't know each other. And people don't know each other because they have not communicated properly with each other. It's so easy to stay in our own silos. It's so easy to stay in our own comfort zones till we don't stretch out and encounter and engage anybody else. And it's something about American culture, and I don't know what it is, but we will not sit, maybe when the Olympics come, we will all cheer together to kick another country's butt. When we were looking at the soccer game, we'll all cheer together to kick another country's butt. But we have to wait until tragedy hits before we come together. And it doesn't matter. They can be in Iowa, Oklahoma. Let those people flood out, Pennsylvania, wherever. People from all over the country will band together and send food and water and resources. I know because I work with Conservation Corps where we send firefighters and people to cut trees and people down in the South to do it. But we have to wait for something to happen before we do that. And the whole essence of this is about how do we do that before we get there. It's kind of late to study for the test when the paper is in front of you, isn't it? So how do we plan to do that and build the kinds of relationships and the bridges that carry us to and from people that we've not worked with before, people that we may not be as comfortable with before? How do we stretch our comfort zone? Because we get conditioned after a while to respond in a certain way. I'll show you. What color is this? White? Help me out. This is one of those participatory things. Just repeat after me. White, 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 white. Let's spell it together. Let's try that. W-H-I-T-E. What does that spell? White. What color is this? White. What do cows drink? Milk. No, water. So most cows down in Laurel, Maryland drink water. Matter of fact, human beings are one of the only species that will drink another animal's milk. Now, remember, and maybe you remember this one. Back in the old days, we had C. Jane Run, Tom, Dick, and Harry. They had a little dog in there. What was the dog's name? Spot. Okay, try this with me. Just repeat after me. Spot, 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 spot. What do you do when you come to a green light? You go. You don't stop. All I'm showing you is in a matter of seconds how easy it is to condition a response. And what I'm going to show you in a little bit is something that's called unconscious bias, and how most of us are doing what's normal and natural to us. This is not a beat-up session on anybody. This is just we doing what flows naturally with us. This is how we were raised. This is what we do. It's not like I'm malicious. It's not that I'm racist. It's not that I'm insensitive. It's not any of those things. Well, maybe for some that we know it might be. But for the most part, it's not that. But when you come into a room and all of a sudden you start talking about you don't have a diversified population, you don't have the kind of stakeholders and shareholders engaged in the partnerships, all of a sudden people do this. What right do you have to come here on my, And it's not even about that. It's about we're doing what comes natural and normal to us, and everybody does it. Everyone. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and how that impacts our ability and how to move beyond it, because at some point, partnerships are the key. I remember when you could go to a gas station and that's all you could get was gas. Now you can get Jerry subs, you can get banking, you got an ATM, you can get gas, you can buy groceries, you can do just about anything, and don't leave home without your Sheets card. But everybody's giving you clips and points, but that's just the way it is. There's partnerships that have been developed, and if any of you ever seen the show The Voice, the singing show, it's amazing how they've all of a sudden merged country music and hip hop together. There's a whole audience out there, but in order to be successful, one has to think outside the box and begin to start thinking about how do we diversify portfolio of service offerings? How do we get clear on the products that we have? How do we get clear on the customer constituency base that we're talking about serving? And we start talking about water and land and air changing. I brought a book I'm going to leave with Brandy on co-ops in the South that I work with black farmers and minority farmers. And how do we build co-ops? How do we expand what we're doing? We first get beyond kind of the mindset where we are, if we're there, and then we stretch out and think a little bit differently. So questions, comments so far? All right? So I wanted to give you just kind of a little piece of kind of essence of background and where I am. I met this guy last night, and he was talking about once he hit 80, he started going around and teaching other people how to feed themselves. We talked last night about, it's just so great and warm to talk about different people. I met the woman at the barn where they got there at Blair County, and we were like, okay, this is great. Have you thought about this idea? And it just got to be a mutual exchange. I don't even know these people, but we started building a relationship. At the game, I was texting family and friends home at the game because I was like, we are ahead 3-0. And she was like, what in the world are you doing in Altoona? And I said, we are ahead. She said, I know they're going to win because their biggest fan is there. So then I sent her a picture with me and the mascot there. But I was just having fun. But these are the same relatives that 25 years ago, I was afraid to even sit down and eat at the dinner table. I'm being honest with you. I swapped the plate with my wife because I was afraid of what they would go do to my food. I'm being very serious and very honest with you. I was so subject and caught up in a dead mindset of rural America, and I didn't see anybody that looked like me, that I was actually afraid. And the fear 25, 27 years ago trapped me and locked me in. Now, I stop in without my wife and visit. Now I'm grandpa. Now I'm just, it's just really different, but the shift from that mindset. So our task this morning is to look at a little bit about partnerships, and then we'll round out the session talking more specifically about partnerships. So the scenario that you have in front of you is to imagine that you've lost your line items in the budget process. To imagine that you have lost your line items in the budget process. And what we want to do is we've got some paper and some chart paper in front of you. What we want to do is ask you now then, who do you partner with to still be an effective conservation district? Who do you partner with? And why did you choose to partner with them? And what is the benefit for your conservation district by engaging with that particular group? Okay? So the instructions again is to imagine now that you have each lost your line items in your budget. And I guess the best way to work this is probably just feasibly wherever you sit, and we'll make sure so there's not a lot of movement. So we've got 3 or 4 sitting here. Maybe if you turned around, you would become a group here if that's possible. And then we'll get a piece of paper on that end. Okay, you got a piece of paper. And then maybe here, if you guys could turn around here. And then if the 2 of you would mind just pulling up close by, and then just form smaller groups. And then we'll make sure that we got a piece of paper near you. But the idea is to think about this, if this was real. You've lost your line items in your budget. Who do you now partner with to stay effective as a conservation group? Why did you choose to partner with that group? And what's the benefit? We're going to give you about 12 to 15 minutes to just talk to yourselves. Don't worry about coming up with a whole bunch of stuff, because if each group comes up with 1 or 2, that'll give us a collective of ideas. Any questions? If you're about done, we can get you to spin back around, and as they would say in the military, as you were. Or stand out?
At ease.
So what I want to try to do is try to get a sense of who we're talking about here, partnering with. And trying to get a sense of who we're talking about partnering with and how broad that is. Because there's no limit to what you can actually do. I mean, they got a commercial right now that goes on all the time that says, you know, this particular band started in a garage. You've probably seen that. This particular group started in a garage. And the whole commercial is where it starts, in a garage. So there's no limit to what you can do and where you begin. You start from where you are, and you stretch out. And the stronger you are is as strong as your partners are. A weak partner is going to take you down. I mean, so you don't just, it's literally using probably a term that may not sound the most appropriate, but you just don't get in bed with anybody. And so there's got to be something there for you to partner with, and at some point there's some limitations on when you just say, enough. It's time for a divorce. This relationship is not working. But then you also got to think about the kids that were created in that process and what was created along the way, and how we're going to take care of that, if you take that analogy. Because there's certain things that may have been created and were born as a result of the partnership, and now they're left on somebody's doorstep or they're left out there, and then what that does, it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth about partnerships and about trust and about some of those kinds of issues. So just broadening your thinking a little bit. So let's hear from some groups about some examples of who you would partner with. Maybe we can start right here. How about one group for a second? Maybe we'll start with one. Okay. Oh, beautiful. And then if we so who would partner with her? Somebody, can we get a partner? And then maybe just hold it up and.
Go to commissioners first, and Martin Crosser is my state rep. He's also the head of the, conservation committee. So I would go with him. We talked about, going to big industry, who we would probably partner with. We have partnered in the past, helping them with stream, stabilization, etc. And planning commission, depending on what county you are. We don't have a very active planning commission because we don't have development. We just have trees. So come to Cameron County. That was my little cheerleading. We go to them because they have the money and the power. And I'm not political, but sometimes you have to do it. And we go to them because we need to remind them of our value. My friend Sandy said, you have to prepare something and say, we have we have 3 full-time employees. The county pays for half of my salary. So they're getting 3 full-time employees. Oh, they forgot that. Or we have stabilized X amount of, stream bank, and we stopped X amount of tons of sediment. We've got to remind them of that. So we go to them to refresh their memory of our value. And third, then we can do our jobs. If we have the money to operate in a fair way, then we can do our jobs in conserving our natural resources, which is why we're here.
Great. Thank you. So let me leave the mic here for 1 second. So let's just take big industry, like somebody in your group. What's the benefit for going to big industry? Why go to big industry? Somebody in your group. Why big industry? Funding. For funding purposes. So what's in it for you? The money. What's in it for them?
Technical expertise.
So technical, but see, we got to get real specific about what's in it for them as well, because you're not the only one coming to them.
Favorable community.
visible community perception, because you're not the only one coming to them. Everybody's hearing the same spiel in every different organization, whether it's education, environment, technology. Everybody's coming to them. How do you strike what's called a distinct marketing competence? How do you say fund us over anybody else? Why is it important for them to go with you, a big industry? So
Because we help them save their property, their streamside property. Like you've done projects there, and we've helped them. They haven't lost property, which is important to every single person who owns property.
okay, so because we have helped them save money, they haven't destroyed any property, they haven't done anything degraded.
Well, you also help them follow the rules, comply to.
Okay, and you help them follow rules and comply. So we're going to them for funding, but you see that there's something under there where I've got to really be clear about. Look at their mission statement. Most people never really look at the mission statements of the organizations. They never look at the values. So under the mission statement, there's also a set of guiding values that move that organization. You want to begin to learn how to tap into the values of them, because there was something that started them off as everything starts from a vision. Somebody had a vision. They were sitting around thinking one day, we'll start this business. There was a vision. There were certain values that pushed it. So they operationalized that into a mission statement, and that's what they live by. And that's what guides them in their profit and their customers. So, but you have to be able to figure out if you're going to partner with them. Because like you said, at the end of your conversation, you said, so then we operate in a fair way. Oh, now the judgment's coming. A fair way. What's fair? That's when they're not expecting us to do anything that's against our mission. That's when we're not being exploited so that they can just write on their line that they partner with us and don't give us anything. And don't sell out, because they may give you $1,000 and get $50,000 worth of benefit out of it, and all you got was $1,000, but you sold out because you were desperate and you didn't link in to what they wanted. Does that make sense? So give me another group that you were partnering with. How about one other group? So in the first group was the hardest because they don't have really a clear kind of sense of where to go and how to report out. So given this as a model, maybe one off your list, and so we will leave out industry because we've already done that, but one that's not industry from over here, and why you would partner with them and what's the benefit to them and to you.
We listed universities because we felt that was, well, personally, we work at Penn State, Altoona. It's a nice partnership because we can provide opportunity for their students to do internships, but now we're collaborating on seeking grants and developing new programs where the district and the university work together.
Okay, so the benefit to you is,
The benefit to us is that, we have a really strong partner to list on our grant applications, and we can show that we're developing programs beyond just conservation, that we're going into higher education.
okay, but just to think about this in a different way, so, and I'm not criticizing what anybody says, there's not a judgment to what you're saying, and I do understand, so we can list them, that we're partnering with them, and that gives us a little clout. But they're on a lot of other people's grant applications also. And what we're really tying into is expanding and creating a pipeline as well for students who graduate. I mean, students who graduate can find a career in some of our organizations, so now we're creating a pipeline. So they come and actually intern at your program. Some of them, depending on the universities where they are, have an advisor that they work and do something at a master's level or graduate level that has a demonstrably different outcome to your community, and you end up getting all of that value and the university on your side, and that's increasing your capacity, because now your capacity is increased because we have a partner like the university on staff. Not only do it increase our capacity there, but now we also have access to their grant writers. And we have access now to somebody that's raising millions of dollars every year that's now assisting us. And they are now, depending on our relationship, they'll pick up the phone and call you. Look, this just came by, because most of them go through foundation centers on a daily basis to look at what grant opportunities are coming up with. But if they know you and they know what you do and they know what your capacity is, know what your reasons are, they know what your mission, they know what your values are, and they have a relationship with you, then they're going to pick up the phone and say, hey, I got an idea. Can we meet on Monday? This is something that's coming through the pipeline. Would you be interested? And then it's way more than just we had them on our list. Right? We've been really trying to figure out how do we get more women engaged, because historically women and people of color have been locked out of the environmental arena. Women and people of color have not been in any leadership positions. So when will that change? And the fact of the matter is women control most of the money in the world. But at the same time, they're not in leadership positions in most of the organizations, wherever you go, urban or rural. They're not. And so there's something wrong with that. Is it gender? Is it sexism or whatever it is? I don't know. Maybe they don't want it. Many of them do when you talk to them. But they're not there. So then it becomes a pipeline to groom leadership and management also for women to increase. And maybe there's something coming through the pipeline where there's an intern or leadership component that comes, and that can then be housed in your program. But the first thing, well, they don't want to work here. Where are we going to find them? You will. They find them. They are there. They want to come there. Just no opportunities for them. And we've really never thought about it because that's not something that we focused on. Well, the universities are focusing on it, and they're developing leadership institutes, and they're looking for places to put some of the folks at. And so there wasn't always a University of Pennsylvania in Altoona and University. They expanded. They're continuing to expand because that's the outreach for them. But I'm just saying you stretch it a little bit more and broader, the clearer you become about what it is that you want, and the clearer you become about what's in it for you, because those are your products, and they have products, so you're creating win-win back and forth and thinking about different opportunities. But again, it comes back to that relationship, so it's a little bit more than just that we've got them on our grant. It's now our capacity. We have a grant writer. We have a whole staff and a team of grant writers and researchers, because some of us can't afford that membership to the Foundation Center or have 3 or 4 people to do that research for us, so somebody's got to do that. We've got that partnership. That's what they bring to the table. Beautiful. Great. How about another group? How about over here? Somebody that you decide to partner with. So we got industry, we got universities. How about another one that's different?
Natural Resource Conservation Service.
Natural Resource Conservation Service. Why partner with Natural Resource Conservation?
The knowledge they have, the training they can give us, the partnership, and helping securing money for the farmers in our county.
Okay, so what's in it?
We work together,
Okay, what's in it for them?
They get free labor.
All right, so they get free labor. You get knowledge, knowledge base that you can add in. Anything else?
Just a good working relationship.
And then they also have access into some other places that you may not have access to. And so for me, for example, and I had to do some work in New Hampshire because the technical colleges were shifting, and they started finding that a different age group was sitting in the classroom now. And so no longer was it adults, because technical community colleges used to be adults. And now what you're finding is young 17, 18-year-olds sitting in the classroom. That's technical college. And so for older people that are going back to get education and continue theirs, they're getting tired of sitting in the class with these little young whippersnappers who don't want to learn. They think they're in high school someplace, and they don't have the capacity. What did you do in high school? So they're not prepared. So then the money that they're paying, so they wanted to revamp their entire technical college system to a community college center. And we didn't know what to do in that community, so we actually went out to the community. So we had to find someone who could get us into the community, because the community isn't going to accept everyone. You can't just say, I'm from Washington, I'm here to help you. I'm from the Soil Conservation District, and we're here to help you. No, the first thing they look at is, what did we do wrong? Are you a regulator? What are you trying to expect? It's different. So how do I then build partnerships with people who may be able to get me into places where I couldn't get into? My only reason for being in a partnership with you is because you can open the door. That's my only reason for being in a partnership with you. Can I be straight up about that? What's in it for me? I'm trying to get my foot in the door. These people will never listen to a word I got to say, but they listen to you. So one of the first questions that we start asking when we start talking about creating partnerships is, who will they listen to? And then they ask the next question is, do we have a partnership with them? Does that make sense? Who do they listen to? And do I have a partnership with them? So now my strategy is to find and build partnerships with somebody that will listen to them, so that I can get my foot in the door to tell them what I got. I can have the best idea in the world, but it'll never get off the ground if I can't market it. You can have the best product in the world, but it'll never get off the ground if you cannot market it. So I'm now getting my foot in the door by developing a relationship with someone else. I want to get it. NCRS might be able to get my foot in the door because of the broad range that they have, because of the arm of the federal government that they're under, because of the types of grants and different types of things that they do. So then it might be impossible. We were talking last night with one person that worked there and was talking about it's always possible for any one of you to bring them an offer they can't refuse. It's always possible for you to bring them an offer that they can't refuse. If you're working in partnership and you got that relationship with them, you can begin to become creative. So it's the knowledge base that they have. So one group was working on something similar on back in the back table. So they said that one of the reasons that they partner with them is for what they can do. We don't have that expertise. It's for what they can do. So if we don't have that expertise and it's for what they can do, then how do I now consider something that I've always wanted to do, but there was no way that I could ever get into doing that? Does that make sense? Let me ask you this, just to think about this for a second, and something might come to you. You've got all this expertise out there. You can partner with it if you choose to. But there's some groups historically and or in the past that you just really have not been able to crack that nut. You just really have not been able to get into that. You really just have not been able to do that. Is there something that comes to mind about a group, an organization, a community that you'd really like to get into if you had the expertise to get in there? Anybody? Can you think of anything? Yes, sir.
We have two communities in our county, at both ends of the old industrial towns, New Kensington and Monessen. And for years, we have two communities in our county who actually identified in our long-range plan. They're old mill towns, and we just have not been able to get into them, Monessen and New Kensington. We just, have not found the right key to get through that door, the right opportunity. And we keep looking, and hopefully sooner or later it'll happen, but we keep looking. And we got in a couple others recently because of some issues that were like near them, and we've got great working relationships with them, but we just can't get them.
So can we talk about that for a second? Are you going to respond to him? So let's talk about this one for a second. But here's a community, the Millstown.
Yeah, it's an old mill county. It's
You haven't- Economically depressed. We haven't been able to get in there. What is it that you would want to do there if you could get there?
Well, first, we do a lot of work with municipalities on planning with their environmental issues. We're working with what they do with erosion sediment control. Just get in there to dialogue with them to help them improve the environmental quality of their towns. I mean, like now with coming up with a new program with low volume roads, they have a lot of roads that they cannot afford to maintain. And how can we provide them with funding expertise to help with those roads? And then, but they put a little skin in the game. They learn how to do things themselves, and we get over the long haul. If their folks are supporting us, because we're doing good things, and as we go to get funding through our county commissioners or state, because we have another constituency that sees value in what we do to help them improve their quality of life.
It sounds all good. So we've got all this tremendous stuff we want to do. Somebody want to bring you funding. They want to increase your capacity. They want to teach you. They want to help improve your roads. Improving your roads is going to bring some other kinds of things in there. But we still have not been. What stops you? What do you think it is the major thing that's stopping you from getting in there, delivering that powerful message of what it is that you want to bring? What's stopping you?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know the hurdle that we have to jump.
Okay, so somebody else just listening to this scenario, because you may have experienced something similar, what do you think is one of the biggest things that may be stopping them from getting in there, delivering that message? Because you may have experienced a similar kind of thing with another group. What do you think it is that might be stopping them from getting in there? Anybody?
Just the right person.
Pardon?
Just the right person.
Just having the right person.
We experience this with some groups that, personnel change. I guess the biggest one, I look at is, is our county commissioners and all. And in the past 6 months, the county executive changed. It went from day to night on communication between the district and the county. Because of one person. And we had some relationships from the district, with other organizations that we had conflicts with you get one person to change, you know, and you get in the door.
Okay? So some of it was just communication. Was there someone else? Usually barriers and blocks that just won't get your foot in the door to be able to share what it is. You have a product, you have something that you want to share. Did you want to comment?
I was just saying, what about the Amish community?
So the Amish community is the same as another one of the challenges, right?
Yeah.
So in the process of talking to some of you, like one of the things that I really attempted to do was I've talked to maybe 5 or 6 of you that are in the room right now for a half hour to an hour over the last 6 weeks, just to kind of get a sense of what kinds of things that you're challenged with. One of the things that I learned, and I never really would have thought a lot about it, was they sent a woman to talk to the Amish person in charge. I mean, so, I mean, but if you're really not thinking about it in that way, you're thinking that what difference would it make? We're just sending the best person we got, and in some shops, all we may have is a woman that's working. But there were challenges in there, so it comes back to the right person at the right time for the right reason, for the right request, and figuring out who that right person is. It was difficult. I was talking to somebody last night that I went to work at a school to do some work at a school. And just historically, just giving you some idea of what I had to think about and what kinds of things you have to think through in terms of building these partnerships. My job was to build a culture in this particular school. Awesome charter school, had 330 students, but it went to 660 students. The multi-million-dollar building that they were going to move into was not ready. So all of a sudden now you got to figure out where to put 660 students come August 26th. And then all of a sudden they find this old school that hasn't been open in 4 years. So they dropped $600,000 or $700,000 in this building to renovate this particular school building, to open it up to get ready for these kids. It was an adequate building when they opened it, but what they didn't really consider was the community that school was housed in. That community was a 4-block radius. The grounds was a 4-block radius in the urban environment. It had a playground, colorful playground on it. It was a place where people walked their dogs. Well, given that a new school was coming in, they all of a sudden put chains and locks on the gates and locked it all out. So now you have a demilitarized zone in a community that's locked out all the people that's been walking through. So in order to get to the metro or the subway, in order to get to the market, you could cut across the field and be there. Now you had to walk 3 blocks around this large fence to get there. And then they had gates. Now you shut off all the people who couldn't walk their dogs. There was no place to walk the dogs. Small thing, but big business was not thinking about that. All they were thinking about was how do we tap into this $9.5 million budget from opening up this school here, and not willing to spend the $6 or $7, and by spending just $600,000 or $700,000. It took me less than $5,000. But the first thing I had to do was to go out into the community. It wasn't safe to go out in the community because guess what? I was one of them. I wasn't of the community. I was one of them. So as much as I would say I'm here to help you, you're one of them. You're coming into our community, you lock the gates, something needs to happen to you. Though I looked like them, I wasn't one of them. I didn't sound like them, I didn't talk like them. I was there, and it was amazing to knock on doors and talk to people about who's the DJ in the community. I'm going to fast forward through this. I ran a block party. I organized local townspeople and got the community leaders of the group to come in there and do speaking parts. I organized health screening, blood pressure checks, and free safety checks, and 2 people that came by that could do dental appointments, blood pressure checks for diabetes. I had public information set there. What was it in for all of those people? It was their outreach numbers. There was outreach numbers. They could reach a community that wouldn't come to them that they couldn't reach. I had a carving station and fresh vegetables and fruits set up so that I fed everybody that came through there. It was amazing watching people come and just stack up 4 or 5 plates and just feed themselves and leave. I had a DJ that lived in the community. I had a guy who was a radio show announcer who did the radio show live from there. I had a moon bounce and all of that. I walked up to one guy who walked his little pit bull around and asked him if I can get a thing to hang on the fence with little green bags in it where you pick after your dog, would you use it? And he said, well, if you put it up there, use it. If I leave the gates open, would you use it and clean up after yourself? Because I have to lock the gates because I can't just have y'all with poop out there with a whole bunch of kids walking around. It's unsafe. Make a long story short, we were there for an entire year. It was successful, but the organization that I was working for never thought about the disenfranchisement, the way they locked off a community, and the way they developed the distrust with that community. So it doesn't matter how safe you are. They're going to pull the gates down. Your teachers' cars are not going to be safe in that community. You're going to have stuff broken into. All you had to do was meet with people where they are, not where you think they ought to be. All you had to do was take a few minutes and spend some time with the people to find out what was bothering them and why you won't listen to us. But who would they listen to? Oh my goodness. I had to go get my hair cut in the barber shop. I had to go to eat in the place where you would, in a nearby local place where you could eat. I had to develop a relationship and sit down with people. But see, we don't have time for that because I got this meeting. Once I worked in Alabama, and I was working with landowners because they were losing their land. And they were losing it to air property, and their land was getting taken over because the developer was coming in taking your land because your father didn't put anything in writing in place. And so the land was sold to 3 different brothers and sisters, and one was in Canada now, one was in Las Vegas, and they got the one that lived in Pennsylvania, and he wanted to keep the land, but the other 2 were sold, and they lost their property. So we had to get organized with co-op. So I come down one day and I'm like, okay, great, we're going to talk about so. I had my PowerPoint presentation, and the little lady looked at me, she said, Emilio, sit down, baby. Have some lemonade and a piece of pumpkin pie. What's your rush? Because I got to be over in the other county. I got to be over in the other county and talk to some other people about, but babe, that's not how we do things here. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I understand, but I really got, well, if you don't sit down and listen, I don't have nothing to say to you. It was amazing. And then I took documents in, and I had paper, and I sat down, and then it blew me away that people sitting there couldn't read. And it was like, wow, what a cultural nightmare for me. They couldn't read. And then all I was doing was breed more distrust, because now I was asking you to read something and you were ashamed and you didn't know what you were reading, so you weren't going to sign it, you weren't going to comply because you thought you were doing something that was against the law, and because you had been robbed before and there was distrust, that all of a sudden that distrust came back, and that's what you figured I was there to do, so you didn't trust me and you said, well, leave it here, let me look at it. And some people just put an X on it. It was amazing. But it was a learning process, and it happens with every group that we work with at some level. Something's going on with them. And do I have the time to investigate and do the level of inquiry and do the groundwork to get there? How important is it for me to move what I want to move to the next level? Whether it's industry, whether it's universities, whether it's natural resource. Who else? How about one? Does that make sense to you? I mean, I don't mean to sound like I'm going on this, but I get so interested in these partnerships because sometimes it gets very simple and we make it more complex than what it really is. We just make it a little bit more complex. How about another group back here? Another group that wasn't listed besides natural resource conservation, universities, or major industries, something else. Designate, yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I probably turned it off. There's a button on the side. Get your green light. Thank you. Got it?
Hear me now?
Yes, sir.
We look at something a little different. We got 6 listed. We thought we were bleeding, we want to put a tourniquet on the sink and lost our line items. So we want to talk to our customers, the ag people and the people we serve for EMS, etc. And what we get out of it is raising our fees. And that might not be palatable, but in the short term, we have to do it.
So this was a partnering, you say, with your customers?
With our customers.
With your customers, and what you were going to get out of it, what was coming out of it for you was a raising fees, which you mean to generate some revenue.
Right.
Okay, and so I know I heard you say that may not have been a thing we wanted to do, but we thought, let me just tell you this for most people. Consultants, afraid to raise their daily rate. One of the interesting things about if you raise a daily rate, you might lose 4 or 5. But the amount that you increase over the ones that are new, because it's an amazing thing that if you try to sell it cheap, people think it's of no value. It's amazing how that works. The same, I mean, I could charge something and somebody will charge 10 times as much to come in and they just automatically assume that they're better. So increasing your fees may not be the worst thing to do if it's clear cut why we're doing that and what advantage it's going to do to you. You don't see Comcast, AT&T, Verizon making any apologies when they raise their fees. You don't see them losing business. You know, I mean, it just works that way. But we got to have a reason. Pepco, they'll say the same thing, and this light's still going off. What's in it for them?
We hope that we have a mutual view for improving the environment, but also to give a better service. Because our service is going to go away if we don't have any money.
So now we got an interesting marketing strategy. This is what's going to go away. I read some article in terms of how many acres of land are lost each day in the state of Pennsylvania. How many acres are lost, the topsoil is lost in the South each day. I mean, until I visited the South, I never realized that the #1 crime in South Carolina was the theft of trees off of people's property. Because John Doe would just drive up with a truck and start clear cutting your land and nobody would think anything because they would think, well, they wouldn't be out here cutting it if it wasn't supposed to be cut. But it's robbery and it's theft. And until people could begin to work together in co-ops and stop that, it stopped. Because then now you got rovers and people that are watching the land. But it was a community because we can't hire enough staff and police. Y'all got a major drug problem in Pennsylvania that's growing rapidly. That's not just in big cities. I mean, so all of those kinds of things impact. It's just being able to expand what you do. How do we provide better service to customers? How do we work together? And what's the reason? Now with some marketing strategy, how do we market to people to tell them the significance and the importance of what they're about to lose if we can't stay in business? I mean, so now it becomes a marketing strategy. How do we show people the benefit of what they're going to lose if we don't? I mean, I would have never thought about that, how important it was to communicate to people that you should stop mowing your lawn so close to the end. I never would have thought of that. Because everybody want these nice, clear, clean lines around their property and like looking all neat and everything, but they don't realize when the water comes and erodes you, you're losing more space. I would have never thought about that. Learned that through talking to one of you on the phone about this. This is amazing. But as soon as you go to try to tell people that, they think you're trying to tell them how to rain their lawn, how to take care of their own home and property. You don't pay rent here, how can you tell me? So then you become on this regulatory arm, and it looks like now you got to carry a big stick, and then you find out that big stick, as much as you hit with it, it don't really do anything either. So then you're stuck, and now you're figuring out how do we really do this in a way to reach people, to communicate a message about what they're going to lose. How do we tap into some of the components to increase our ability, our knowledge base, our capacity, to increase their capacity and teach them more about the land and actually what's being lost? What else? How about one more? One more group. One more in terms of who you would partner with. Losing your money, line item. You want to continue doing what you're doing. How about one more? Anybody else?
Farm Bureau.
Okay.
I got the microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
We had nonprofits, watershed associations, foundations.
Nonprofits and foundations?
Yeah, foundations.
Okay. So give me one nonprofit, for example. Nonprofits.
Richard King Foundation.
Okay, so what's in it for you to, going back to the money? Okay, going back to the money, maybe some increased capacity. What's in it for them?
For them, it's more of a philanthropic.
Philanthropic?
Philanthropic. Thank you. I can't say this. Yeah, they're doing this for the good of the community.
Okay.
And we're a vehicle for them to do that.
All right. So let me just ask a different kind of question, right? And then was there one that you were going to share earlier?
You talked about marketing.
Yeah.
You talked about we've talked at this conference about people don't know what we do.
Hold on one second.
numerous sessions, we talked about, people don't know what we do, people don't understand us, and I'll give Jen Lauer credit from Allegheny. She kind of said something a couple of weeks ago that hit me and said, everything we do in a conservation district is triggered by what? I mean, the conservation on farms that we do, the ENS planning, post-construction stormwater, is all triggered by a rain event. If we could partner with a group like meteorologists who are on TV, we talk about rain events every day. I probably watch the meteorologists more than anybody else on the news. So, could we get someone like a meteorologist community who would share our message as a part of what they do to the community of service to better understand what happens when that rain event happens and that water droplet hits the ground?
Right.
Because everything we do in conservation is driven by that water droplet hitting the ground.
Exactly.
So, what's in it for them? They always are looking to expand the scope of how they can teach and how they can educate and things they can do. So maybe we need to be talking to meteorologists, because they're the ones that are on the media all the time talking about rain and rain events.
Exactly. And they're always looking for 90-second pieces that they can put into the news, that they can fill in the news. In the Washington metropolitan area, we have them in the schools. You have schools set up that are meteorologist schools. You have schools that are set up as weather sites. You have schools that are set up so that you'll hear, and it's 82 degrees this present movement of the Monarch Charter School, one of our and then those kinds of things. But it's beginning to build those relationships again. And these are just real people that live in the community that you know. So how many of you know right now, just a show of hands, how many of you people in the room right now know somebody that works at a radio station, or let's say a television station? Just a show of hands. How many people know somebody that works at a television? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 people in the room that know somebody that works at a television station. How many people in the room have some background in terms of writing, English, where writing was your major, where you focused in writing? Let's show of hands. 1, 2, 3 people, like they holding up the hand like this because they ain't trying to write for you. So there's maybe 4. How about people that could design a website? Anybody in the room that could design a website? Got that capacity? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, 7. People that could design a. How about people that know somebody at a radio show? That opposite a radio DJ or announcer. Anybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the point I'm making is a lot of times what we don't do at the beginning is something that's called community asset-based mapping, asset-based community development. We don't map our own assets. And once we figure out what we actually have, then we can figure out what we could do with it. So oftentimes we're guilty of not mapping our own assets that we have within the room. So if we could take the people that we have in our own community and look at this as a community, which it is, and I've never met people like Robert and Brandy that care so much about the community that they serve with. I've been talking to them a lot over the phone over the last few weeks, but that level of care that they have about who you are and what you do and what they do is amazing. But to understand what are the assets that you actually have within your own community as opposed to being in different silos, because what affects one affects all. So I heard that someone was going to do something on Comcast around water barrels or rain barrels or something. Excellent opportunity. That would cost you an arm and a leg to get that if you had to pay for it. And then strategically, how did we as an organization build on that level of success so that we open other opportunities for other topic areas so that maybe now we're creating a series on issues that affect the environment. But it's starting to think in those kinds of ways. What assets do we have and how can we capitalize on it? If we had all of this stuff, how could we use that to tackle some of these groups that we have? One of the things, let me switch the conversation a little bit. I didn't hear anybody say that you would partner with church groups. Any partnership with church groups? And what would be the benefit for a church partner with a church group? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
We listed it as American service-related organizations, so that was Elks and Lions and churches and others.
Okay, so Elks and Lions and churches and Masons and Shriners and Eastern Stars and all of those people, Kiwanis, that have an interest in doing something of service. That's part of their mandate, also to be able to work with those. What's the benefit to them? Always looking for a service project in the community. Always looking. How many of you ever partnered with the Corporation for National Service? Whoa, that is an untapped resource that you have got to handle. The Corporation for National Service is an environmental organization that provides AmeriCorps, VISTA volunteers, foster grandparents, senior programs. So you got a lot of senior programs that could be drawing down a stipend every week to go out and do exactly what you want to do, some of the kind of work that you want to do. But that's a whole, every state has a state national service office, and they have a local national service office in every state. If you go to corporationfornationalservice.gov, just look them up and see what kind of programs and projects, but that's an untapped resource that I didn't see one hand go up for, that Vistas, their whole job is to increase the capacity. They work around environment, they work around green, they work around green schools, they work around farming and feeding people and all of these kinds of things, but it's another resource that we haven't really tapped into. And it might even bring some income into seniors who are sitting and not doing anything, that they could volunteer 4 or 5 hours a day, and it's something for them to do. They do literacy programs in school. They do all kinds of things. I noticed that no one put down like urban environmental justice groups or environmental justice groups, because they're not all just urban, but environmental justice groups. What would be a challenge of working with urban environmental justice groups? Any thoughts?
They tend to be extreme.
They tend to be extreme. Say a little bit more about that.
Well,
Well, I'm going to give you the mic. And you have a valid reason, so don't worry about it.
no. It tends to be a level of extremity on many of those groups. It's green. I don't know why it's not loud. But
You just have to hold it closer to your mouth. There you go.
there tends to be a level of extremism on many of the environmental groups, which turn off the vast majority of people. So, for instance, I can only give you an example of the Pacific Northwest. There are people who are very concerned about endangered spotted owls or marbled murrelets, and in the process, they want to stop all logging in the state of Oregon. That's an extreme reaction. That's not a group that you necessarily want to partner with, because you turn off more people than you turn on.
Okay. Any other thoughts about working with environmental justice groups or other environmental groups? So there's somebody in the room from Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I worked with Chesapeake Foundation for the last 20 years. I worked with an organization that actually funded Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Chesapeake Bay Foundation gets into a whole lot of these kinds of issues, but they've managed to figure out how to crack that nut, because they play a role in between all of these different types of groups. They work in the urban areas and the urban watersheds, but they also work with, so I'm going to put you on the spot, and if you can give like a 30 to 60 second piece about what makes it successful for you, because I'm sure you've seen the level of extremism that she's talking about, and there's got to be a way to penetrate through that. So what's been successful for CBF?
I think what we found most successful is finding ways to partner with groups, and we certainly had the experience of groups who are interested in working with us who are in sort of a more extreme viewpoint, but we always maintain a science-based approach to all of our arguments, and so if it, we're very kind of clear in our messaging that there has to be a real scientific basis to what we're working on. And we are a large organization, we do have kind of specific issues that we are working on. We can't jump on every bandwagon. And so it helps us sort of figure out what the best relationships for us, and the ways that we can work with some of the smaller local groups that might have a more, a more sort of extreme viewpoint. How can we educate them on what our sort of science-based background, what kind of conclusions we've come to, and is there a middle ground that we can meet on, and there's some issues that we can work together on. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And but when we find it successful, it's when it gives us an opportunity to maybe have a broader reach into the local community. And so we're a regional group. That's always something that we're looking to do. So that could be an advantage for us in working with a smaller group that might have a different viewpoint going into it than us.
Okay. And that's not the panacea to what you're saying. I mean, it doesn't address everything you're saying because there are going to be extremes, but at some point we have to figure out at what level do we work with people. So, and some of the issues that I've found with working with some environmental groups and environmental justice, there's a book back here that I'm going to leave a couple copies so that you can look through it later, but it's Cultural Diversity in National Parks. There's 380-some national parks in the United States, and national parks were finding major difficulty because they weren't reaching out to broader constituencies in the national parks, and certain people didn't feel like it was safe to go into national parks. And the national parks also had all of these kinds of issues that you were describing in terms of environmental issues, depending on where the park was. It was a BLM issue and it was over water, and people battle over water like you would not believe. So we don't have water wars on this side of the country like they do out in the Pacific Northwest and through Montana and some of those places. It's a whole nother nightmare with people taking water and damming water. But what happened with the national parks was they had to figure out how to make parks more relevant to other populations. So for one example, they couldn't figure out Hispanics in the Latin population was wondering that the parks are not for us. They would look in and they would see something and wonder why we're not comfortable here, we're not supposed to be here. And then so what we started looking at was in the national parks. The national parks wanted to give you this nice, pristine experience. And I'm not ridiculing what they were talking about, but they would have a campsite here. And then you would drive a little ways away around some trees in the place. And then there was another campsite here. And then you would drive a little bit more ways away. And then you would move around and there was another campsite back over here. Well, for the Latin population, that didn't work. Why? This community, familia, they would rather have had a campsite here, one here, one here, and one here, so that they could all be together because that's a part of who they are in terms of being together. And this was a park down in Tennessee that actually changed the structure in the way that the park was. They actually changed the hiring practices of who was there because people didn't feel comfortable coming into a park. And there was nobody that looked like me. There was nobody that could speak the language. And when actually national parks were interpreting natural history and national history, there was no one there that looked like people, that sounded like people, that could even relate to the story that was actually being told. So this is a story of how we work with 300 and some parks to begin to shift that and change that. Have they resolved it all? No. But is it a better experience for people in the parks today? Absolutely. For a lot of different people. But it took a lot of work. But it took a lot of work at a community partner level. It meant going into working with different communities and identifying what their issues were and where was their extremism and where was there all these other issues. Where could we find common ground to begin to build from, to build trust? Because the first thing we had to do was to begin to build trust. And so that became the beginning. So because for some of them, people couldn't understand why you giving money to save seals and an elk and a moose when there are no jobs in our community, there's poverty. Why you want to build a recycling center in our community when trucks going to come through and have all this problem and dust kicking up, and then there's going to be environmental problems for us, and there's lead paint and the issues that we're dealing with, and we're dealing with crime, and you want to deal with Save the Fox. But all of those kinds of issues. And then until we started in Los Angeles, we had people, now they're planting green in because we could go to a science-based approach and show how green space added to the quality of life, added to the air that you breathe. So now we've got young kids now working in the urban areas to actually take some of the trees that were seedlings growing in rural areas and bringing them out and actually growing trees in the community. Now you got gardens in communities where, here's another one. And I mean, this is a joke, but it just sounds facetious. In any area where you go in and you say, we're going to do something for those people, and we're going to go set up a community garden, people stole the food. If you go in and say, this is our community garden, and we want to work with you to develop it, nobody stole anything. So it's a difference between ownership and a timeshare unit. right? You own this, and where there's some ownership and there's a stake in it that you own this, but that meant somebody was willing to sit down at the table with you in the beginning to find out what was important to you, what was of value to you, what was of interest to you, and figure out whether there were any places where we could agree to disagree, where we could agree to work together, and then maybe from that we could begin to build some trust to work together, because it's not going to happen overnight. So on the first page in this particular document here, you'll see one, and most of these are just handouts that you'll be able to look at, but I want to try to address a couple of points real quick. In this one, I just put down there critical elements at the foundation of your success. It's mutual respect, mutual trust, and mutual freedom of expression. So as a bottom line, if there's no mutual respect, and you're taking credit for something that you didn't do, and you're not willing to honor somebody else for what they did, there's no mutual respect there. You're not going to figure that people are going to respect you. So it's something to be able to say in a room, had it not been for the work that Brandy and Robert did and prepare me and 5 other people that I was able to talk to on the phone, I gave me a lot more clarity than what was here. Yep, I was offered the opportunity to go to the game last night if I wanted to, and I took that. It was a blast, and I enjoyed the game, even though they lost. I enjoyed the game. But the opportunity to be able to participate, the respect, the consideration for that, to be asked up front, would you do that? The point of having someone at the elevator when I came downstairs to say, Mr. Williams, is that you? I was sent here to make sure that you didn't have any problem getting to the convention. It's like I was dumb. No, I'm just kidding. But so that you wouldn't have any problems getting to the convention center, I was going to walk you around there and show you what. That's respect. That's just respect. That's how you treat people. How do we do that with people that we're working with? Mutual trust. If I don't trust you, if you don't trust somebody, what are you going to do? I'm going to watch my back all the time. I'm going to spend my time documenting. I'm going to make sure that I got a way to defend myself when you come down on the wrong side. If I don't trust you, I'm going to avoid you. If I don't respect you, I'm not going to give you credit for what you do. Now I don't respect you and I don't trust you. And if you don't have mutual freedom of expression, what is that going to do? If I don't feel like I can say what I want to say, what am I going to tell you? I'm going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. Tell me what you want to hear. That's what I'm going to tell you. Oh, yes, sir, we've done that as soon as he leaves. Could you believe these guys came over there and they want us to do A, B, and C? What'd you tell them? I told them exactly what they wanted to hear. And they're gone. And let's go back to it. So what they going to do? Fire us? What they going to do? Take my land? They can't do nothing. Leave them alone. Boom. That's it. Does that make sense? That's what goes on. And then you go back and you're like, wow, I can't figure out how to get into these people and talk to these people. Well, let's figure out how do we come together and sit down and look at how do we negotiate and collaborate and identify what's of mutual importance to each one of us at the table. Because I tell you what, I've been in the best hotels in the world, and one night I was asleep and a fire hit that hotel, and it didn't matter whether you were in a $1,000 room or whether you were in a room down the bottom. The only thing that was important now was air and water. That was the only thing that mattered was air and water. And you needed to know to get low to the floor and don't open the door. You needed to know that there was some water coming someplace in the water. You needed to, we got people that were fishing in the Anacostia River. Chesapeake Bay Foundation has been doing work over there for a long time. But at one point, there were people fishing in that river, and the fish that they would catch was toxic that you shouldn't be eating. But rather than not eat anything, they were eating that. You got people that got water coming out of their sinks, and this is West Virginia, in their teeth. If you look at it, it's just amazing. And these are issues that you're dealing with all the time. The loss of soil and farming, and seeds being changed in terms of where your dependency is on larger corporations for what you can and can't grow in the soil, and that you got to change. This is a big game. But how are we going to do this? You work together. Because if you're doing it by yourself, it'll never take change. It'll never happen. I know it'll change because I've changed. I know it'll change because I changed. I look back today at some things that I did 5 years ago, and what I was speaking about 5 years, totally different. Totally different. But it's a willingness and a desire to change and move beyond my own rigidity. It's a desire to move beyond. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're discriminating. I'm not saying that you're racist or culturally incompetent. I'm saying, can we broaden this a little bit? Because what's at stake? What's at stake is the water and the land. That's what's at stake. When you're dead and gone, what's still at stake is the land and the water. Our kids are growing up. They want to move to the big city. They don't even want to become farmers anymore. They don't want to take care of the environment. They don't want to do that. They want to move someplace. Who's going to take care of the land? All of this is what you did. Who's going to take care of that? What's at stake? Now, if what's at stake is that critical and that's important, am I willing to bend a little bit? An old farmer told me one time before, Emilio, you see that tree over there, son? When the storm comes up, if that tree is not willing to bend a little bit, the next time you see it, it'll be flat on the ground. That's when I coined the phrase, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. How willing are you to bend? How willing are you to flex? You can still maintain who you are and what you do, but are you willing to bend a little bit to hear with the other so that you can begin to bring in that capacity, so that you can bring in that knowledge base, so that you can bring in those people that can help you reach the other people that you can't reach? Who is it that you know? Anytime I go into a city and I stay at a hotel, I don't talk to the concierge. People ask him, where's the best place to eat? Oh, yeah, you go over to so-and-so restaurant. So, not to give me that crap. You've been paid to tell me that. I go to housekeeping. Where's the best place to eat in town? Oh, you got to go down to the locals. You got to go down to so-and-so. They got the best barbecue, macaroni and cheese, whatever. That's what you got to do. I ask if at the front desk, is it safe to walk in the community? I don't ask security in the front desk. I ask housekeeping. Yes, sir, but you don't want to go down so-and-so street. That's all I really want. I'm going to people. So I go get my hair cut. I go into places where people go. I go and frequent. I buy stuff in the communities where I am. I support other communities where I go. I leave the maid a tip and say, thank you. I'm from Lower Maryland, but it was appreciated. It was just nice to be able to lay my head in a clean room. Thank you. Mutual respect, mutual freedom of expression, and mutual trust. How do we build those kinds of things? Last thing I want to show you real quick is how this bias actually works. So this has to do with herbal medicine. Let's see, if I go to one slide. That one at the bottom. So there's a point of view. What this is showing is what's your point of view, that the majority felt that it was all natural. 18% thought it was forward thinking, 8% miraculous, herbal medicine. Let's go to the next one. One slide out. Okay, so this is organized fun. What do you think? What's your point of view? Is this organized fun? And we'll go to the next slide. What's your point of view? It was a pleasure. 19% thought it was embarrassing. 16% thought it was phony. 9% thought it was uncool. You know, but if you look at hell, intolerable, uncool, phony, and embarrassing, the majority thought this was a joke. Go to the next one. Wind farm. What's your point of view? When you think about what your point of view is. Go to the next one. 41% thought it was necessary. 23% thought it was an alternative. 18% beautiful. It was free. It's just a different perspective. All right, let's go to the next one. Toy guns. What's your point of view? But when you think, because certain things come to mind, when you see images, certain things automatically come to mind. Let's go to the next one. 32% thought it was misleading. There was 16% thought it was harmless. 14% and 11% thought it was fun. 7%. So, but if you look at the majority, they thought it was aggressive, it was harmful, it was misleading, and it sends a different message. Let's go to the next one. So, what immediate response or feeling did you notice when you saw the picture? Any surprises? Did you learn that the scores you saw were part of the majority opinion or the minority opinion? Could you have guessed what the majority opinion is? It's hard to guess what the majority opinion is going to be because I'm only looking through my own lenses. I'm only seeing what I see from my point of view. So if I ask, you know, it's easy enough to say, if I ask what you see, somebody tell me what you see. Colored dots, what color?
Red, bronze, and green.
Okay, can anybody read the title?
Where does racism?
Where does racism come from? And I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, what in the world are they talking about? Oh, I see what you're talking about. But the illustration and the point is, if I'm looking at it from my perspective, I don't even see what you see. If I look at it from a different perspective, now I see something totally different. And it's amazing to me that in life, there's an up and a down, a hot and a cold, a left and a right, the east and the west, the north and south. There's even a God and the devil, but everything you can think about, there is an opposite. And we spend so much of our time vested in the way that we see something that we can never be willing to come to the other side to see it from a different perspective. Does that mean that I give up mine? No. That just means that I come and at least be able to see it from how you see it. It's no different than if I get, whoa, where did everybody go? If I give you these glasses and you look through my lenses, you're going to see something different than what I see. The same principle. So what lenses are you looking through? Are we looking through the lenses that we've been conditioned to see through, that come from our parents and our schools and our media and the people that taught us, that thought they were right, that were loving and caring for us because that's the way they did it? And that's the way it was always done. If a thing broke, don't fix it. And that's just one mindset. Or do we expand that a little bit and look at it in some different ways? So let's go to the next one. Skip that. Culture teaches us to how to think, feel, believe, and value. And all groups develop a common system which tells us what to pay attention to, what we ignore, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. Every culture, that's developed within our culture. You know, we've taught to not talk to strangers. Wow. If you've held on to that for all your life, it's difficult now to walk into a community where there's strangers and not be able to talk to strangers, because I've always been taught all my life to not talk to strangers, and how much of that got really ingrained and what experiences that I have in that. And sometimes, depending on what area you're in, I've been to places where people don't lock their cars and lock their houses. My father-in-law up here in Somerset never locked his door until about 10 years ago when there was somebody standing in the kitchen. Times are changing. But he had never locked his door. I could come in town and I could go over that house anytime and the door was open. I could go in and take a nap. It was always open. Not today. It's changed in the last 10 years. Now that door is locked. It's so different. So, and if you're in an urban area, people go there and to see certain people walk across the street, lock their car doors. People coming down. I've been on the highway on 495 on the Beltway driving, and sometimes you know how you just groove into the sound while you're driving. And I looked over to my window and I saw this woman over there driving in her car, and she locked her door. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna jump out the car while I'm driving. But I mean, it's just that mindset that we get locked into, and it's the way we've been taught how to respond, how to behave. We have a certain response when we see overweight people. Boom, automatically we have certain response. We see people that have a different skin color, automatically have a certain response. Somebody come with a foreign language, automatically a certain response, because we've been programmed for that. Washington, D.C., we called every health and human service organization to get help on a particular problem, speaking in Spanish. And we were hung up on, the people didn't answer the calls, and the same people called back, speaking in English, and got a response. I mean, it is so different that people would discriminate against you they discriminate against you by your name. I have been to airports and people were walking around, and I'm saying, walking up to somebody, excuse me, are you waiting for Emilio Williams? And they're like, yes, sir, can we leave? Who were you looking for? I mean, so then I start going in, hola, mi nombre es Emilio Gonzalez. You know, what am I supposed to do? I was working in Oregon once with the Confederated Tribes of Umatilla in Warm Springs, and I'm driving, so I'm leaving Portland, and I'm riding to the reservation to get up to Warm Springs. And so I stop at a gas station. I ask the guy, excuse me, can you tell me where the reservation is? He said, well, where did you come in on the highway? I said, about 40 miles back. You've been on the reservation the last 38 miles. I'm like, Jesus. What was I looking for? I was looking for TPs, smoke signals. I don't know what I was looking for. But my mindset had got me to that point where I was looking for something totally different. I mean, so that's what we do, but that's what culture does. It teaches us and it becomes ingrained, and behind everything is a belief. And a habit is just a belief I keep on thinking. A habit is just a thought that I keep on thinking. A belief is just a thought I keep on thinking, and it becomes a habit, and it becomes ingrained. And without investigating the belief, wow. So if I have certain thoughts and I keep on thinking, those are going to become my beliefs. And my beliefs are going to shape what I do. And that's how culture shapes us and forms us. Let's go, and most of it you can't tell from looking at the top or the tip of the iceberg because you don't really know. They wouldn't know, so I'd go in the rooms and, well, now you do know a little bit more about me, but you wouldn't know that my wife is from Somerset. you wouldn't know that I have a grandchild up here. You may not know that I'm 60. Somebody thought that I was Brandy's father last night. So, but you would know. But you wouldn't know. My ego was like, wow, they would think that you're a father. I thought maybe they would think, Lord, but maybe you're a boyfriend. But no, you're too old. You're too old. But you know what? In my mind, I don't even see the age. I'm like, I'm stuck on 30-something. I don't even see a 60-year-old guy. But that's what we get locked into. And so if you're not, ask him how old he feel like he is sometimes. The body might feel one way, but the mind is something totally different. Let's go to the next one. Scientists estimate that we're bombarded with 11 million pieces of information at any one time, every day. Our brain can only deal with 40 to 50 pieces of that information, so we filter out some things and let other things in, and then that automatic processing can be useful for it, but this is what we're doing because so much is coming at us all the time, so we filter out. Go for the next one. An unconscious danger detector. We need that because there's an unconscious danger detector within us that warns us. Let's go to the next one. Let's see how the automatic word processing interference works. Read the words. Read the words. Read them.
Green, black, red, blue, yellow, blue, green, red, black.
Did it feel any different when you read? Did you notice that there was a little pause when something came that looked different than what it is you wanted to say? Go to the next one. This one is just saying the color of the words, so it's kind of the same thing. Red.
Green, purple, blue, green, blue.
So did you find yourself saying what it was as opposed to saying the color, right? Just a different block. Let's go to the next one. All right, read the following. Let's go to the next one. See if you can read that. According to research at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters are and the word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be in the right place. The rest of it can be a total mess. You can still read it without a problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. That's what we do, and you can read that. Right? Go to the next one. All right, pick a card. Everybody focus on the card. You got your card in mind? All right, let's go to the next one. Focus on your card. Go to the next one. Is your card there? Nobody's card. All right, so, it took me a while to get this too, but there were none of the same cards up there. They're all totally different cards, but I was sitting there looking for my card. My mind was still locked in on looking for my card. And then when I found out that everybody couldn't find their card, let's go to the next one. So what we understand is that bias, a preference for a group, is based on attitudes, stereotypes, sometimes prejudice, discrimination, or stereotypes. The explicit parts are what we're aware of. The implicit is what we're unconscious of. That's maybe 95% of what we do is coming unconscious. That it's unconscious kinds of things that we're actually doing, and it's not by any malintent whatsoever. It's just stuff that we've been ingrained with that we do automatically, and it's called unconscious bias. I'm going to make sure that you have the website link. It was on another slide, but you can take an implicit bias test that was developed by Harvard University that will tell you exactly where your biases are. And you can do it with male and female. You can do it with a lot of different kinds of things, with race, but it'll tell you where your biases are. The important thing is to know where your biases are, that's all. This is not a judgment. This is just like, can I know? I have them too. I have my own biases. We all have them. It's just, do we know what they are and how clear are we on what biases we actually have? And then once we know what biases we have, then we can begin to do something about them, because those same biases are interfering with our ability to establish effective partnerships, regardless of what group. It doesn't matter whether it's an environmental justice group. It doesn't matter whether or not you want to change the complexion of the room to have more people of color in the room. It doesn't matter whether you want to have more women in leadership position. It doesn't matter whether you want to have young people in your room. Like I've seen people set up an advisory committee of young people so that there were young people sitting at your next conference. So the next conference then, maybe one goal is to have an increased level of diversity, to have more young people sitting in the room with a presence on the microphone, that they actually have a speaking part and something to offer that totally relates to what they're doing as it relates to what you're doing, because you've partnered with them over the year and now they're coming back to talk a little bit about what it is that they've been partnering with to work with you. You might have a farm group, somebody that does roadside stands. Most people that I know, the farmers can't eat all the stuff you grow. They're throwing away tomatoes, they're throwing away stuff, and at the same time, I know groups of young people that have set up food side stands. They learn entrepreneurship, but they have a partnership with a local farmer. So we're finding all kinds of ways how to get them engaged. There are already co-ops and farmers groups that are near to suburban areas and rural, urban areas. I mean, in the farmer's market in Laurel, a lot of that food comes from as far as 100 miles away, and you're not that far away. Some of it comes from Pennsylvania, some of it comes from Virginia, North Carolina, but they bring their food to other places. But if you could take the ship, some of them's got pick your own. Some places to pick your own. You can go to pickyourown.org, and they'll tell you what's growing in that particular season, where you can pick it, what farmers are opening up their doors for you to come, because it saves gas, it's less carbon effect. You can come pick your stuff up. It's all kinds of ways to build partnerships, though. Let's go to the next one. So the new science, the science of bias does not make you prejudiced, it makes you a person. In the past, bias is regarded as aberrant, conscious, and intentional. Today we understand that bias can be normative, unconscious, and largely unintentional. And it's mostly triggered by primary factors such as age, race, and gender. Let's go to the next one. And so, for example, in job applicants with ethnic-sounding names where they were disadvantaged. A recent study showed that people with white-sounding names were 50% more likely to get a response than black-sounding names. I mean, if your name is Shaniqua Johnson, you're going to get a different response than if it's Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's just going to be a different, that's just what people are hearing. But there was a phase when people were going through naming their kids. I mean, just think what I had to go through growing up with a name like Emilio. I hated it all my life because I was bullied and teased because of my name. Orchestra auditions favored men over women. Until the 1970s, virtually all musicians in major symphony orchestras were made. Musicians were made. When blind auditioning was implemented, many more talented female musicians were attracted and brought in. At the corporate level, less than 15% of Americans, men are over 6 feet tall, yet 60% of all corporate CEOs are over 6 feet. I mean, it's just amazing, but there's a bias that's in there that says that if you're going to be a corporate CEO, you got to be 6 foot or higher. And that's discriminatory to a lot of other people. It doesn't include women. Let's go to the next one. The type of drink. In interview subjects were rated higher because the interviewer had a warm drink in his hand rather than a cold one. If you're going to get rated higher. That's just a natural fact. Because of the bias. Weight, a person being interviewed was rated lower because he or she was sitting next to someone in the waiting room who was perceived to be overweight. Heavier people perceive lower performance rating. Look, short people get labeled also. Like if you're short and you know somebody's short, people accuse you, are you angry, you mad about something? You know, it's just amazing what the biases do. Accents, people are less likely to have factual information if it's communicated by someone with an accent different than theirs. It's really very different. It's really difficult for me to talk to people. So the first thing that people will say to me as an African American when I was going to school, and it's hard for some parents, is why you got to talk like you white. You sound like you white. That's what you mean I sound like I'm white. What does it mean to sound white? Well, all them words you use. I mean, it sounds like a joke, but to be discriminated against because of the way you sound, the vernacular, the tone of your voice. I mean, that's amazing. But all of those kinds of things impact. So I've learned how to go to writing. I can write a letter and sign the president of the COI group and send it to your job now and file a complaint that I would never go back in your business. I'm going to send this and tube it and send it to my other constituents that travel to your hotel. And all of a sudden now I got a different response than if I called up on the phone and complained. It's amazing. How do I develop those? Is there another slide after this one? Okay, so you can turn the flashlight on, tell the truth to yourself, question yourself, and notice what influences your decisions regarding people. Create your own metrics, stretch your own comfort zone. And I wrote a couple down here that I'll just close with if I can put my hands on them. In closing that, whether we like it or not, people are going to do what they're going to want to do anyway. It don't matter what you say, people are going to do what they want to do until they don't. So my question is then, how do I help shift the inclination? How do I help shift your inclination? People are going to do whatever they want to do anyway. So how do I help shift your inclination to do something different? That comes through building a relationship with you where there's some trust. That means me and you can sit over across the table and talk. That means that, I had a beer last night. It was the first beer I had in almost a year and a half. It was just, it just felt like having a beer. Am I judging? But I can be with people. I could have stayed in my room. Goal is not to get you to go against your nature. Maybe it's just to think about it shifting and expanding. But the more you become aware of your own bias and what stops you, maybe the more you'll be able to flex, because you won't know how far you can go until you go as far as you can. You probably have different practices today with farming and taking care of water and preserving wildlife and mowing lawns and using rainwater and runoff than you did years ago. It's totally different practices that you do now. Now it's your nature. It just comes as part of your nature, where it was something totally different that you do. You're still going against people who still want to do things the same way they always did. That's the battle. You've shifted and they won't and moved on, but they didn't. But that's who your customer and your client is. You've learned, you've practiced it, now it's second nature. So ask yourself, what beliefs are you attached to? Where did they come from? And what will it take for you to let some of that go? Because the partnerships are out there to be built upon. If you can figure out what's in it for them, what's in it for you, who do they listen to, how do we approach them and maximize all the kinds of things that you said to increase our capacity, to use the talent that they have, to reach audiences that we have not been able to reach before. It's like Star Trek, to go where no starship is gone. It's like to go in there and do what it is that you want to do, because the bottom line comes, what's at stake? What's at stake is the land. What's at stake is the air. What's at stake is the water. I'm sorry, but it don't just stop at the border of the county line. One thing spread across one border affects everybody else. Even pot growers out in California know this. Let me tell you, that one person could be growing 14 plants. I know this because a good friend of mine has cancer, and she's legally can grow 14 plants. She's out there every day because the last thing she want to do is see one plant that's a male plant rise up in those plants. If one male plant starts to grow in that pot, it will cross culture and germinate a 4-mile radius to anybody else growing pot within a 4-mile distance. And it destroys their entire crop. What that means to them economically is that it's 1/4 as potent as the other, but that's the way it rolls. So what's happening in your county is happening in another county. You get a beetle crisis, you get water crisis, the water goes through all the tributaries and all your streams, and you know that. So you can be doing something upstream or downstream and somebody peeing upstream. Doesn't really matter. So then you start developing relationships with people that's doing water sampling and testing, and you got people in the schools, and you're bringing people out in communities and buses, all of that. I want to tell you that building partnerships is not easy, any more than any of you in the room that are married or in a relationship, and then what that was like when you first met that person and you thought that was the person for you. And then how that changed and how much you had to be flexible to yield and not have your own way. And then how much of that changed when you added a child. And then how much of that changed when you added a second child, because you quickly realized that you couldn't raise the first child, the second child, the same way you raised the first, that they're two totally different personalities. And you learned, and you adjusted, and you became more flexible. And the key to building the partnerships is to be flexible, to build the relationships, to find out who people listen to, and sit down at the table and begin the process. Thank you so much. I hope this has been beneficial for you. It's been an honor to be able to serve you. Thank you. All the other handouts are just information that substantiates or helps support what's there, and I'll make sure that Brandy and Robert have the other books that are left behind. Yes, sir.
What's that website?
Can you bring up that first one? I tell you what to do. If you would just Google, just Google Harvard implicit bias test. Just Harvard University, Harvard implicit, that's one of those strange words. It's hard to spell. IMPLICIT. Harvard implicit assessment test. All right, and Google that, and then it's in confidence, but just be honest with yourself, because it'll tell you if you press a button and it's like male, female, and you take like 2 seconds to click your response, it's going to nullify everything. It's going to be like, no, you're trying to be tricky, and what we're trying to do is get an honest response from you, so you don't have to share nobody. It's in confidence, but see for yourself where your biases are, and there's probably 20 different areas that you can look at your own bias, and then start to talk to people as they call up Joe. Joe, guess what? I hate women. No, but I'm just whatever. but do whatever. But it's information that you can use, and that'll be helpful. And then if there are other questions that you follow up with and you want to feed them through the office, just send them to the office and I will respond and I'll provide whatever other materials or handouts or information that would be helpful for you. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.